Hey everybody, I'm Jesse, and welcome to another edition of Gen X Thinks. And today I'm going to talk about death, and does Generation X fear death? But before I get into that, I'd like to thank our founding members, give everybody a shout out who deserves one here. Vintage 65, Wiley Ann, Jimmy Sharp, Kathy Schneider, April Lucas, and Darren. Thank y'all for becoming members, and I sincerely appreciate it. And I posted another video for members this morning, so be sure to check that out if you haven't already. So, death. And I'm not talking about fearing death like, being brave or whatever, like in a war, or like Evel Knievel, having no fear. Not that kind of stuff. I'm not talking about being brave and completely fearless. I'm talking about just the thought of dying, life ending, your energy, your soul, whatever, not being on this planet anymore. Just the next step, the next stage, whatever that is, whatever you believe that is. If that's nothingness, then it's nothingness. If it's heaven, whatever you think it is, moving on to that next stage, the end of this one. And I make that's a small distinction, but it's important, I think, because there are a lot of people out there who are daredevils and they'll jump motorcycles and stuff, and that's not. I'm not talking about risking bodily injury for fun, that kind of stuff, right? Because if you take that person, some of those same kind of people who are daredevils, and then you give them, they come up with a terminal illness, they're going to be afraid of dying. So I'm not talking about that. There's a difference there between that kind of bravery and for life and limb, and just not being afraid of death. I mean, actual death. So being faced with certain death and not being afraid. Be willingly taking that step into the next or whatever, or waiting on it, whatever. So there's a difference there. And I'd like to say here that I'm not trying to say that I'm brave or I'm a badass or anything. It's not about that. It's not about, like I just said, it's not about life and limb. It's not about bravery or anything like that. It's more like just walking through a door. Right? I'm not afraid to walk through a door. There's no reason to be. That's just how I view it. There's just no reason to be afraid. It's not something that I'm afraid of because there's no reason to be afraid of it. I'm not. Bravery, in my opinion, and I'm pretty sure this is how it works. Bravery, in my opinion, is action in spite of fear, not action instead of fear. Action instead of fear is sometimes stupidity, sometimes just ignorance. But to be brave, you have to be afraid. You have to overcome fear to be brave. And I'm just not afraid of death. So I'm not claiming I'm brave. I just don't see it as something to be afraid of. And because of that, this video and this entire channel is based on that kind of stuff, is because I realize that a lot of the traits that I have run through our entire generation. Because a lot of the people you see online and a lot of people you talk to and stuff, they're from other generations and they're completely different than me. They don't view the world in the same way I do. Then I ran across some Gen X stuff being posted, and I realized that a lot of Gen Xers have the same traits and views on the world that I do. So we have a lot in common as Generation X. And I'm just wondering if this is one of those things. So please let me know in the comments and tell me if you feel the same way. Have you always felt that way? Just kind of give me an idea of how Gen X is as a whole. I've faced what I thought was certain death 2 or 3 times in my life. Once on a motorcycle, there was no way that I was gonna escape it. There was a tipping point there, and it was I went past that point, and I knew it. I felt it. I was gone. I was done. Right. But I somehow it worked out, and I got through it alive. But in that space of a couple seconds or whatever, time slows down, and I just wasn't afraid. I was afraid for a broken, mangled body, but I genuinely thought I was going to die. I wasn't worried about my body being broken and stuff because I thought that was the end. I knew it. That's how firmly I believed it. I knew it. This is it. There is no more. This is where it ends. And I wasn't afraid. So, and the people who have been in those situations can really relate. It's hard to explain this kind of thing with someone who has never faced certain death or really knew that they were going to die, that this is the end. And if you haven't been through that, it's hard for you to imagine what it would be like. But for those of you who've been there in that situation, you can relate. Were you afraid at the time? Did your whole life, and everything you would be leaving behind, did all that flash in front of your face and all this regret and everything? Because that didn't happen to me. None of that happened. I wasn't worried about everybody being left behind. I wasn't worried about, this kind of stuff. So this is the end. That's it. And I pretty much just was resigned to that fact. I'm ready to see what was next. But it turned out that it wasn't. I was wrong. That's happened, like I said, that's happened to me a couple times. And one other time was with some other people, and I literally thought they were going to kill me. I knew they were. Because of the situation, I'm not going to go into the details of the entire situation, but the situation was that they were going to kill me. And there was no getting away. There was no getting out of it. But then it worked out that they didn't. So basically. But at that time, when I thought it was going to happen, I knew it was going to happen because there was way too many of them, and it was just their decision. And I knew what their decision was, and it was just, I knew I was done. I knew I was going to die. I knew the jig was up. This was it. This was the end, just like the motorcycle thing. There was no question in my mind. This is it. So I put my back up against the wall and was going to do my best. But my point is that I wasn't afraid. Now, I was afraid for the pain that I was about to experience, but I was not afraid of death. I was not afraid of continuing my journey on to whatever it was going to be. I wasn't afraid to find out what it was next. And that wasn't bravery. I'm not saying I was brave or I was going to kick a bunch of ass or anything. I was just going to get killed, basically. So, but I see this, and it seems like the norm is to be afraid of dying. To regret all the things you left undone and all this stuff. And I look at this and it really puzzles me. I see people die every day from literally still in the womb all the way up to 115 years old or whatever, and everywhere in between. We could die at any day of a car accident, a lightning strike, an elephant stampede, whatever. You never know. So I just logically, I don't understand the fear of it. And why everybody, it's ingrained in us to try to scratch out every second we can here on Earth. I just don't get that logically. Now, not to say that I'm willy-nilly with my life. I don't want to, go out anytime soon. I'm not saying that. I'm not a lunatic. I'm not a nutcase. But just logically, when I think about it, when I run it through my head, I'm like, why are we like this? What is the point? What's the point of living to be 115 years old? when you're still going to die. And that's a big thing. I don't understand why people are bad to each other. It's really difficult for me to understand. Just evil for evil's sake. Now, everybody's got to do what they got to do to survive sometimes. I'm not talking about that. But just being plain out evil, that's difficult to understand. Difficult for me to understand because our lives are so short. Why take that stain with you no matter where you go afterward? Why would you want to go there after being a villain, after being the bad guy? I don't get that. So I think we should be good to each other. And then I had another instance with a horse where I thought I was going to die, and not even that. That's the bad way to put it. I knew I was going to die. That's the thing. I knew it. In my mind had just played through the scenario and there was no way out. This is it. You know what I'm saying? And I never got this like jammed up fear of just the concept of death itself. My life was going to end. Oh my God, I'm going to leave this world and all this stuff undone. And everybody leaves stuff undone. Everybody leaves stuff. So, all these people that have gone to war as teenagers and young men and they died, and are their lives meaningless? Were they meaningless? Is it because they didn't get to live to be 53 like me? I personally have never wanted to live to be real old and die in a bed. I'm more, I would have my death mean something. Dying for freedom. And I'm not talking about dying for democracy on some foreign ground. I'm talking about dying for freedom on our homeland. Or dying because I ran into a burning building to save some kids or something like that. You know what I mean? To go out with meaning. And not to go out on purpose. Don't confuse what I'm saying here. I'm not saying self-deletion here or anything like that. I'm just saying if I were to die, when I do die, I would like it to have some meaning, not just laying in a bed and fading away. That's just not the way I would choose to go out. That's probably the way I'm going to go out, but that's not the way I would choose. I would rather go out like a Viking or a samurai or something like that. Go out with honor and doing something noble. So I don't always feel sorry for firemen and police officers and stuff like that. I mean, I do. I feel sorry for their families, but they got to go out in a way that had meaning, So we at least gotta acknowledge that their death had meaning. I think maybe that's why some people can do those jobs so effectively, because they're not afraid of death. Now, afraid of the physical dying, yeah, not the death, not the afterlife, whatever you want to call it. So let me know what you think about it. And I'm sure that every religion plays a part in that. Whatever you believe plays a part in that. But I'm more curious to know about Generation X. How do we view it as a generation? And I'll leave you there with that. If you enjoyed this program, please like, subscribe, and comment. And if you'd like to become a member, I'll put that link down in the description, or you can head over to the channel page and join up there. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by clicking on that super thanks button down there. Or you can head over to buy me a cup of coffee and buy me a cup of coffee. And I'll put that link down in the description. If you're interested in Gen X gear, you can head over to Redbubble and check out the Gen X stuff we have over there. Gen X and Gen X Thinks branded stuff. Hoodies, t-shirts, coffee mugs, stickers, all kinds of cool stuff. And I'll put that link down in the description as well. If you can't or don't want to support the channel in any of those ways, you can always do so by sharing this video on your social media. Thank you very much for doing so. It helps out a lot. I really appreciate it. And if you have any ideas for future episodes of Gen X Thinks, please put those down in the comments, or you can email us, and the email is over on the channel page. And as always, stay frosty, Gen X, and I'll see you on the next one.